Welcome to a channel where every story peels back the curtain on secrets, betrayal, and shocking twists in family and relationships. Here, the truth never stays hidden, and every twist of fate is designed to leave hearts racing and minds stunned. From the first hidden truth to the final, jaw-dropping revelation, these stories expose lies, manipulation, and raw emotions that you won't find anywhere else. Witness betrayals so deep that allies appear in unexpected forms, and secrets unravel in ways no one could predict. Every moment of shock, every confrontation, and every turning point brings clarity, empowerment, and unforgettable drama. If you crave gripping stories that spark curiosity, ignite emotions, and show the consequences of deception, you're in the right place. Brace yourself for twists, heartbreak, and revelations that will stay with you long after the video ends. Every home has its quiet corners, places where shadows linger unnoticed, where laughter and smiles mask the undercurrents of tension. For years, the life that appeared perfect was only a carefully curated performance. Every gesture of affection, every whispered "I love you," felt like it carried weight, but beneath it all, a current of deception had been quietly building, like water slowly eroding stone. The illusion of love, loyalty, and trust, once so solid, began to feel fragile, as though a single touch could shatter everything. It started with subtle inconsistencies that went almost unnoticed at first. A phone left unattended, a sudden defensiveness over trivial questions, or a fleeting look that seemed out of place. The mind searched for explanations, trying to cling to faith in what had been built over years, but intuition cannot be silenced when it senses danger. Questions began to stir, but the answers were buried beneath layers of practiced normality, designed to soothe suspicions and keep the truth hidden. The secret that had been kept for so long finally began to surface in the smallest of ways. A misplaced document, an unusual bank statement, a strange name appearing in the margins of a notebook, tiny cracks that revealed the immense weight of deceit beneath them. Each revelation felt like a needle, pricking through the veil of comfort and familiarity. It became clear that what had been trusted as honesty and devotion was only a carefully constructed story, a facade designed to hide actions that were never meant to be discovered. The emotions that followed were raw and unrelenting. Shock was the first wave, crashing over every thought, leaving the mind scrambling for coherence. Anger followed closely, burning hot and consuming, a relentless reminder of how deeply betrayal had been woven into the fabric of everyday life. But the most painful sensation was the realization that trust, once broken, leaves a wound that never fully heals. The memories that once brought warmth now felt like lies, each smile and tender touch reinterpreted through the lens of betrayal. Every seemingly innocent interaction became a question, a test of what had really been hidden behind familiar eyes and practiced gestures. It became impossible to ignore the depth of the deception. A life that appeared flawless to the outside world was riddled with lies and half-truths, each carefully calculated to prevent exposure. The truth was heavier than expected, each revelation cutting deeper than imagined. What had been taken for granted, loyalty, love, integrity, was stripped away piece by piece, leaving only the stark reality of manipulation and hidden agendas. The betrayal was not merely about isolated incidents. It was woven into the very foundation of the relationship. Every promise that had been broken, every confession that was never made, every late night and unexplained absence accumulated into a weight that was impossible to ignore. The recognition of these patterns was like walking through a familiar house, only to realize that the walls had been hiding secrets in every room. It was unsettling, terrifying, and profoundly sad, knowing that the person who had been relied upon the most had orchestrated a world of deceit so carefully that it had gone unnoticed for years. But the most haunting part was how ordinary it all seemed until the cracks appeared. The public smiles, the shared meals, the casual gestures of care, they all masked something much darker. It became clear that the betrayal had been intentional, a deliberate act of manipulation designed to maintain the illusion while concealing truth. Every hidden message, every secret meeting, every carefully guarded interaction now made sense in a way that was both shocking and heartbreaking. The realization that someone capable of such betrayal could wear the mask of normalcy for so long left a lingering ache that no explanation could soothe. As the truth emerged, clarity replaced the fog of confusion. The magnitude of the deception was undeniable. The weight of betrayal pressed down with a gravity that could not be ignored, and yet, within that darkness, the first sparks of understanding began to take shape. Recognizing the hidden truth was the first step toward reclaiming control, a necessary awakening that demanded courage, patience, and careful observation. The life that had once seemed secure was now a landscape of revelation, and navigating it required confronting the lies and manipulation that had been hidden for far too long. And in that silence, after the shock and the anger had settled, one truth became clear: deception can never remain hidden forever, no matter how carefully it is guarded. The morning began like any other, quiet and unassuming, yet something in the air hinted at change. A routine glance at a phone or a casual sorting of papers turned into a moment that would fracture everything that had felt familiar. At first, it seemed insignificant: a message overlooked, an account tucked away, a file that had gone unnoticed. But the subtlety was what made the revelation so devastating. The world, once stable and predictable, began to tilt on its axis as the truth emerged from shadows where it had long been hidden. The discovery was sudden, almost accidental, yet impossible to ignore. A single glimpse of a private message, the faint hint of correspondence meant never to be seen, revealed a side that had been carefully masked. Words that should never have existed in a life built on trust now lay bare, exposing not just deceit but intention. Each line seemed to vibrate with betrayal, each detail a reminder that the life believed to be shared had been manipulated from behind closed doors. Shock rippled outward, crashing over every thought, leaving a haze where clarity had once been taken for granted. It was more than just curiosity. It was the undeniable evidence of duplicity. A hidden account, a forgotten password, or a trace of secretive planning revealed the extent to which deception had been woven into daily life. It was as if a mask that had been worn effortlessly for years had finally slipped, allowing the truth to shine in its stark, uncompromising reality. What was trusted as loyalty, partnership, and shared intimacy was stripped bare, revealing calculated acts of dishonesty that had long gone unnoticed. The realization hit with full force. The foundation of a life built together had been carefully manipulated, and every interaction had carried an unspoken double meaning. The emotions that followed were chaotic, unrelenting, and visceral. Shock transformed quickly into a searing anger, hot and uncontainable, fueled by the depth of betrayal. Memories that once felt comforting now twisted into evidence of manipulation. Moments of laughter, tenderness, and companionship were rewritten in the mind, reinterpreted as part of a performance designed to conceal hidden truths. The heart ached not only for what had been lost, but for the audacity of a deception so meticulously executed, leaving a trail of doubt and disbelief in its wake. Questions began to surface, demanding answers that could not be delayed. Every ordinary action, every small lie, now seemed laden with significance. Was this a one-time indiscretion or a pattern meticulously hidden? How long had the manipulation been in place? Each answer, when discovered, only revealed more complexity and cunning than expected. The shock of the initial discovery gave way to a gnawing awareness that nothing could ever be taken at face value again. Trust, once assumed to be absolute, had been weaponized, and reality itself felt as though it had been rewritten. Even as the mind tried to process the revelation, fragments of prior interactions now appeared in a new, disturbing light. Moments that had seemed trivial, a hidden glance, an unexplained absence, a deflection in conversation, were no longer dismissible as coincidences. They were pieces of a puzzle that had been silently assembled over years, a web of calculated deception designed to ensure that the truth remained buried until this exact moment. It was a cruel precision, a betrayal not only of love, but of the very perception of what life together had been. The first discovery ignited a cascade of emotions and realizations. The shock was compounded by disbelief, then replaced by clarity as each hidden detail was traced and understood. Evidence that had seemed mundane, numbers in a ledger, emails archived under obscure titles, messages deleted but still visible in fragment, suddenly formed a narrative of manipulation. Each discovery was another layer peeled away, revealing the true depth of betrayal and the extent to which one life had been hidden behind appearances. Through the haze of anger, heartbreak, and confusion, a grim determination began to form. Recognition of the deception brought clarity that could not be undone. The hidden truth, once exposed, demanded attention, and the first discovery became the spark that ignited a broader awareness. The manipulation was no longer abstract. It had been revealed in concrete evidence, undeniable and impossible to ignore. Every subsequent action would be shaped by this knowledge, and every misstep by the betrayer would now be seen in its full context. The ordinary day, once thought uneventful, had become the moment everything changed. Life, as it had been known, was built on manipulation, and the first glimpse of truth marked the beginning of a reckoning that could not be avoided. The world would never feel the same again. The air became heavy, each breath weighted with anticipation, as the moment that had been avoided for so long finally arrived. Silence had stretched between words unsaid and glances left unexplored, but now the tension could no longer be contained. Every heartbeat echoed in the room, a drum of inevitability that demanded reckoning. Anger, betrayal, and disbelief collided in a storm that left no room for pretense or denial. The truth, once hidden behind careful smiles and subtle deflections, now demanded its place in the open, and the atmosphere was charged with the electricity of confrontation. The first words were hesitant, fragile, yet filled with a power that could not be contained. They pierced the illusion of normalcy like a blade, cutting through years of carefully constructed deceit. Each sentence, measured and deliberate, exposed layers of lies that had been long buried, forcing recognition of the depth of betrayal. The tension mounted as each revelation landed, heavier than the last, leaving no escape from the reality that had been denied for so long. Shock reflected in wide eyes, the weight of exposure pressing down, and a sudden understanding dawned that the foundation of what had seemed unbreakable was now crumbling. Every confession revealed truths that had been hidden in plain sight. A casual gesture, a whispered word, or a subtle action that had once seemed innocuous now carried the full weight of intent. The cumulative effect of years of manipulation unfolded in that room, each revelation adding to the unbearable clarity of what had been done. Anger burned hotter as the extent of the betrayal became undeniable, and every memory replayed with new significance, twisting familiar moments into evidence of deception. Each lie, once invisible, now stood exposed, raw and unmistakable. Betrayal was no longer an abstract concept. It was a living, breathing reality, manifest in actions that could not be undone. Words long left unspoken now surfaced with unrelenting force, breaking the fragile silence that had allowed manipulation to thrive. The power of truth cut deeper than any physical wound, leaving scars that were felt in every thought and every memory. The impact of the revelations reverberated through the room, leaving no corner untouched by the gravity of exposure. Trust once assumed had been shredded, and the illusion of love and loyalty dissolved in the harsh light of confrontation. Disbelief wrestled with clarity as the room held its breath. Questions that had been simmering beneath the surface now demanded answers, and the weight of expectation pressed down on every word. Every attempt to deflect, deny, or explain fell flat against the undeniable evidence, leaving a silence that spoke louder than any defense. The betrayal was total, and yet, in that stark revelation, the first flickers of understanding emerged. Recognition of deceit was painful, but it was also the first step toward reclaiming agency, toward navigating a path unclouded by lies. The confrontation was more than words. It was an unmasking of intent, a laying bare of all that had been hidden. Anger surged with clarity, striking like lightning across the heart, igniting emotions that had been suppressed under years of assumed normalcy. Shock coexisted with awakening as each truth reframed past experiences, showing how every decision, every secret, had been shaped by manipulation. The emotional impact was profound, a mixture of fear, rage, and liberation that left no room for pretense or doubt. The intensity of the encounter built to a crescendo, each revelation a hammer striking against the walls of denial. What had been assumed to be stable and trustworthy was revealed as fragile and false, and the implications were inescapable. Lies that had whispered through quiet moments now roared, undeniable in their clarity. Every attempt to explain, excuse, or redirect attention was futile. The exposure was complete, leaving the full magnitude of betrayal laid bare. And yet, amid the anger and heartbreak, a strange sense of focus emerged. The confrontation, painful as it was, provided clarity and direction. The web of deceit that had threatened to dominate life for years was finally visible, and with that visibility came the power to respond, to reclaim control, and to navigate a path toward resolution. Every word spoken, every secret revealed, strengthened the resolve to no longer be silenced by manipulation. By the time the final words had been said, the truth stood unshakable, cutting through all pretense and leaving a silence that was heavy, but also empowering. The confrontation had stripped away illusions, revealing the raw, unvarnished reality of betrayal and the path forward. The foundation that once seemed unbreakable had been shaken, and nothing would ever feel the same again. When betrayal runs deep, the truth rarely stays confined to shadows. The web of lies, no matter how carefully spun, attracts attention in subtle ways, drawing eyes that notice what others ignore. Some arrive as allies, unexpected and unannounced, revealing fragments of the story that had long been hidden. Family members who had seemed oblivious suddenly offer insight, sharing pieces of evidence or observation that had been overlooked. Friends, once silent or unaware, provide perspective, connecting dots that had remained invisible until now. Even strangers unwittingly become witnesses to the unraveling, their casual remarks or inadvertent disclosures adding layers to the emerging picture. Every interaction becomes a clue, each fragment of information shaping a narrative that had been carefully concealed. Conversations that once seemed mundane now carry weight, and subtle observations reveal the true extent of deception. A sister's passing comment, a friend's recollection of odd behavior, a neighbor's glimpse of furtive actions, all contribute to understanding the depth of betrayal. The mosaic of lies, once invisible, begins to form with startling clarity, showing how intricately the deception had been woven into daily life. It is a strange and unsettling feeling to realize that the exposure of secrets does not depend solely on confrontation. Observers, whether intentional or accidental, illuminate corners that the betrayer thought were safely hidden. Their awareness acts as a silent force, a mirror reflecting the reality that had been denied. Every whispered confirmation, every corroborated detail, fuels the growing awareness of how carefully manipulation had been maintained, and how completely it had been believed by those who had trusted blindly. Allies appear in forms that are as surprising as they are necessary. The cousin who had always seemed indifferent now steps forward with crucial evidence, photographs, or recorded exchanges that confirm long-held suspicions. A friend once overlooked in the inner circle suddenly recalls odd patterns, strange excuses, and inconsistencies in behavior. Even strangers, such as a colleague or passerby, provide unexpected testimony of encounters and actions that no one else had noticed. These seemingly small interventions become monumental, exposing the breadth of betrayal in ways that confrontation alone could never achieve. Each revelation triggers a cascade of raw emotions. Shock returns with renewed intensity, amplified by the realization that the deceit had not been confined to private moments, but had spread quietly into the awareness of others. Anger simmers as every observer's confirmation reinforces the understanding that manipulation had been deliberate, carefully executed, and meant to remain invisible. The mind races, piecing together the timeline of lies and omissions, reconstructing the reality that had been disguised behind everyday gestures and routines. Every uncovered fragment strengthens the sense of vindication, a quiet triumph against the clever orchestration of betrayal. It becomes clear that secrecy is a fragile thing, even in the hands of those who believe themselves masters of deception. The presence of allies and hidden observers serves as a powerful reminder that truth rarely stays buried. Every casual remark, every incidental observation, every act of attentiveness adds weight to the exposure. Patterns that were invisible in isolation now appear undeniable in totality. The realization settles in with clarity. Nothing can remain hidden forever, and the eyes of others, whether expected or not, eventually bear witness to actions intended to stay secret. The unfolding of this awareness is both empowering and unsettling. Each ally provides not only evidence, but also guidance and insight into navigating the consequences of betrayal. Conversations with those who have witnessed parts of the truth offer a perspective previously denied, highlighting the significance of seemingly minor events that had gone unnoticed. Their presence transforms the narrative, allowing the full extent of manipulation to become visible. Trust begins to rebuild, not in the betrayer, but in the network of observers and supporters who affirm reality, revealing that loyalty can exist even amid deception. In the process of discovery, the sense of isolation diminishes. Allies, both known and unexpected, help illuminate the path forward, making it possible to confront the magnitude of betrayal with clarity and resolve. Observers' testimonies validate intuition, providing confirmation of what had long been suspected but not fully comprehended. The tangled web of lies starts to unravel, thread by thread, as hidden secrets are exposed to eyes that refuse to look away. Every interaction, intentional or accidental, reinforces the understanding that betrayal cannot survive when scrutiny exists, and that every manipulator eventually leaves traces in the awareness of others. The realization crystallizes: deception can never remain entirely hidden. Allies and observers ensure that every secret has its exposure, and every act of betrayal will ultimately face the light. The moment arrived when patience had run its course and deception could no longer dictate the rhythm of life. The lies, once layered with careful precision, had begun to unravel, leaving the betrayer exposed to the subtle forces that had been silently observing every move. Strategy replaced shock, careful observation replaced disbelief, and every revelation became a tool in a quiet, methodical plan. The scales of power, once tipped entirely in favor of manipulation, began to shift imperceptibly, each misstep by the betrayer nudging them further toward exposure. Every detail previously overlooked now became vital. The seemingly minor contradictions, the fleeting inconsistencies, and the subtle patterns that had long been dismissed as coincidence suddenly held immense significance. Notes hidden in plain sight, small lies disguised as normal conversation, and private actions once believed secret all accumulated into a map of betrayal. Each fragment of evidence was catalogued, weighed, and held in reserve, like pieces of a chessboard laid out for the inevitable endgame. The realization that these revelations could be wielded as weapons brought a sense of control that had been missing for too long. The betrayer's confidence, once absolute, began to falter. Over time, the cracks in behavior became more visible, subtle tremors in the carefully maintained mask of innocence, a fleeting hesitation before a lie, a glance too quick to avoid, or a defensiveness over trivial matters all revealed a growing awareness of exposure. Every miscalculation fed the emerging strategy, every error sharpening the understanding of how to reclaim dominance from someone who had assumed control through deceit. It was a delicate balance, requiring patience and precision, yet the satisfaction lay in knowing that the betrayer could not anticipate the full scope of what was being observed. Anger and betrayal, once raw and unmanageable, transformed into focused resolve. Every memory of manipulation, every moment of hidden deceit, became a tool in the construction of a plan. The awareness that the betrayer had underestimated the resilience of those deceived fueled a quiet but burning determination. The previously powerless now held the advantage, armed with knowledge that the betrayer could never undo. It was not merely revenge as a fleeting thought. It was inevitable, meticulously plotted through careful observation and strategic timing. Trust which had once been shattered was now repurposed. Observers who had been allies in uncovering hidden truths now played a subtle role in the unfolding strategy. Each interaction was calculated, each revelation timed, and each word measured for impact. The betrayer, unaware of the extent to which their actions had been recorded and analyzed, continued to operate under the illusion of control. This false sense of security only accelerated the turning point, allowing every lie and secret to be weaponized with precision. The emotional landscape shifted as clarity replaced chaos. Shock no longer dominated thought, anger had found direction. Every secret exposed, every hidden motive revealed, contributed to a larger narrative of accountability and reclamation. The betrayer's previous victories, achieved through deception and manipulation, began to crumble in the light of careful planning and patient observation. The balance of power, once entirely skewed, now tilted unmistakably toward justice. Each action taken by the betrayer inadvertently played into the emerging strategy, reinforcing the inevitability of consequences long delayed. It became impossible for deception to hold sway. The realization was profound. Manipulation could no longer dictate outcomes, and the once carefully controlled world of lies was now open to disruption. Strategy, patience, and observation had combined to create a force far stronger than raw emotion. The betrayals that had caused pain and confusion were now tools for clarity and retribution, each revelation wielded with deliberate intent. The turning point had arrived, and the trajectory of consequence was no longer abstract but unavoidable. The tension of the past months, years even, condensed into a moment of awareness. Every misstep, every concealed action, every whispered lie now served as evidence and leverage. The betrayer could no longer predict or control the unfolding reality. The once hidden truths, long buried beneath careful performances, had emerged fully, and the path forward was undeniable. The shift in power, subtle at first and then unmistakably complete, marked the moment when revenge moved from thought to certainty. From that point onward, every calculated observation, every quiet preparation, and every act of patience contributed to an unstoppable momentum. The betrayer's influence had been diminished, their manipulation rendered ineffective. What had been an overwhelming weight of deceit became a framework for reclaiming control and asserting the undeniable truth. The turning point was not merely the exposure of lies. It was the moment when the inevitable began to take shape, and the consequences long delayed started their relentless course. The scales had finally begun to tip, and there was no turning back. The final confrontation was nothing like imagined. The secrets long buried and carefully hidden were finally laid bare, each revelation hitting with a force that left the room trembling. The full scope of deception, manipulation, and betrayal became undeniable, each lie and omission now visible in stark, unflinching detail. It was no longer possible to pretend that the world had been ordinary, that life had been stable or predictable. Everything that had been built on trust and loyalty had been corrupted, and the true magnitude of what had been done was finally inescapable. Shock was immediate and suffocating. Words that had once been whispered in secrecy, gestures that had been hidden behind false smiles, and actions that had seemed inconsequential now emerged in their full, damning clarity. Every moment of dishonesty, every calculated misstep, every act of manipulation was revealed not as isolated incidents, but as part of a grand, deliberate deception. The impact was crushing, hearts raced, minds reeled, and the atmosphere crackled with tension and disbelief. The person who had orchestrated the betrayal could no longer hide behind excuses or charm. The truth was exposed, raw and unstoppable. Regret flickered in small, telling ways, though it was too little, too late. Apologies, feigned remorse, or attempts to justify behavior fell flat against the weight of undeniable evidence. Every action, every hidden communication, every suppressed detail now pointed to a reality that could not be undone. The scale of betrayal was staggering, the careful construction of lies and manipulation now collapsing under its own weight. It was a reckoning unlike any before, a culmination of years of secrecy, deception, and unspoken truths. Awe settled in quietly amid the chaos. The revelation of hidden actions, the careful tracing of every lie, and the unveiling of carefully concealed motives created a landscape both horrifying and mesmerizing. The ability to see the full extent of betrayal, to witness the intricacy of manipulation, left those present stunned. The power dynamics, once skewed entirely in favor of the deceiver, had shifted irrevocably. Control, authority, and confidence were no longer theirs. The exposure of truth had changed everything. Every hidden thread of betrayal now intersected, forming a web that could not be ignored. Past decisions, long hidden motives, and calculated acts of manipulation came together, creating a complete picture of deceit. The shock of understanding was matched only by the clarity it provided. Each revelation amplified the significance of the others, leaving no room for denial, no space for excuses, no hope of reclaiming lost credibility. What had been carefully concealed for so long could no longer survive scrutiny. The emotional toll was immense. Anger and hurt surged alongside disbelief and astonishment. The depth of betrayal was felt in every heartbeat, every glance, every silence that stretched between words. It was impossible to dismiss the realization that someone trusted entirely had orchestrated a world of lies. Every tender moment shared, every vow once believed sacred, every gesture of love and care now carried the weight of deception, rewritten in the harsh light of truth. Yet amid the chaos, there was an undeniable sense of empowerment. The unveiling of secrets, while painful, was also liberating. The deception that had dictated emotions, decisions, and perceptions no longer held sway. Truth once obscured now ruled. The path forward, though scarred by betrayal, was illuminated by clarity. Every hidden action that had caused pain became evidence of resilience and strength, proof that manipulation cannot survive when confronted with unwavering scrutiny. The final reckoning was not just personal. It was public in its impact, unshakable in its consequences. Those who had once been complicit, knowingly or unknowingly, now understood the gravity of what had occurred. The betrayer's influence crumbled under the relentless force of exposure. Every carefully maintained illusion, every attempt to hide intent, every manipulation designed to control others had been dismantled piece by piece. There was no room for escape, no ability to reclaim power, and no future built on lies. In the end, silence fell, heavy and complete. The room, once filled with tension, now carried the weight of truth fully realized. Shock, awe, and regret mingled with the undeniable clarity that had been achieved. The hidden world of deception, manipulation, and betrayal had been exposed, leaving nothing left to conceal. The power that had been wielded so confidently was gone, replaced by the undeniable authority of revealed truth. The story concluded with one undeniable fact: no deception can survive when the relentless pursuit of truth and justice comes to bear. Thank you for watching this unforgettable journey through betrayal, revelation, and the ultimate reckoning. If this story left your heart racing and your mind stunned, make sure to hit like to show your support. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story where secrets are exposed, emotions run raw, and every twist keeps you on the edge of your seat. Share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters in this journey of truth.